Yeah, I speak a lot on personal branding in particular. And then the other topic I speak and have spoken on for probably the last 15 years is digital marketing. There was a very significantly successful program we ran under my leadership at Sears and Kmart that kind of put Kmart back on the map for a number of years. And so I was very happy to have that be under my leadership. And again, kudos to my team. And so I spent a lot of time during those years explaining kind of what we did and how we did it.
Hello, I am John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that say, I know Canada and I know Prince George, I know BC, British Columbia, I know Vancouver, well, we are about 500 miles north of Vancouver. And for our European friends, that equals about 800 kilometers, which puts us in the middle of British Columbia. Absolutely beautiful, east to west, north to south, the middle. So today we have a very special guest. Her name is Adriana Cowdin, and she is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, an amazing lady that has an amazing background. Cowdin is a native of Chicago suburbs and who resides in Indianapolis. She holds a bachelor degree of business management and completed several management and leadership courses at Harvard Business Management School. You have an amazing background, Adriana, and so tell us about that, your background, and then your education, obviously quite extensive, and then you've been quite involved in businesses and then obviously executive counseling or coaching, I should say, as part of what you do. So share with our guests what you do.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I was raised in the Chicago suburbs and spent about 10 years in Denver, going through college and things like that. Got my degree in business management and started my career actually in human resources and recruiting, which is how I turned into just loving executive coaching.
Right.
And then moved into marketing when I was out in Denver. Ended up opening my own company right around the late 90s, early 2000s when everyone needed a website. So we were doing website consulting for Herbalife, companies like that had kind of structured websites where you'd have a parent and a sub website. So that was really my first company. And then I built a software called HR in a Box, which if anyone's familiar with Bambi HR, it would have been the predecessor. That was probably one of my best entrepreneurial lessons, which I'm happy to share at any time. Yeah. And then went back into corporate America, moved back to Chicago downtown and took over as the vice president of digital and social mobile marketing for Sears and Kmart back in their heyday when they were like a $40 billion retailer. And then moved to Indianapolis where I reside now. And I joined ADT's residential business, which is a large home security company, as their chief digital marketing officer. And after about a year there, I ended up with some significant health challenges. And so I left the organization and opened Dekaf Digital, which was my next company, and ran that for about 7.5 years and sold that off last year. And now I spend all of my time doing executive coaching and what I kind of call is knowledge sharing.
Knowledge sharing? Mm-hmm. What does that mean, Adriana?
So I try to publish articles and blogs, be a guest on podcasts. I usually do a weekly newsletter or email of some sort where I can share as much knowledge as that I have learned from my 25 years of executive coaching and being an entrepreneur and a C-suite executive. I feel like not everyone understands the value in having an executive coach or a mentor or someone like that in their professional realm. And so I try and share some free resources and that knowledge I have as regularly as I can.
Now, the other thing that I noticed, you've been on all the major media numerous times. So you're a speaker and obviously you're a presenter as well. on some of those different topics, I presume, on the
Yes, I
major
speak a lot
medias.
on, yeah, I speak a lot on personal branding in particular. And then the other topic I speak and have spoken on for probably the last 15 years is digital marketing. There was a very significantly successful program we ran under my leadership at Sears and Kmart that kind of put Kmart back on the map for a number of years. And so I was very happy to have that be under my leadership. And again, kudos to my team. And so I spent a lot of time during those years explaining kind of what we did and how we did it.
And timing is everything, as they always say. Digital marketing changed everything, including those brands, and now structures like Amazon and the likes have become very dominant in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. What I find most interesting is people don't understand at Sears and Kmart, it's just called Sears Holding when you work for all of the brands.
Right.
There are about 150 brands and 30 business units. And so my team worked across all of them. It was probably one of the most technologically advanced organizations I've ever been with, moved at like lightning speed fast, and had some of the most intelligent and talented people I've ever worked with. And people often think, oh, well, they went under because the company didn't have the right talent or the resources. That's just not the case. I mean, it was a wonderful place to work. I mean, it was rough, but it's got its reputation for a reason. But it was such an experience. And when you see things like COVID happen and people start to transition to what we call BOPIS, which is buy online, pick up in store.
Right.
We were doing that, gosh, almost actually 10 years before COVID. We
Right.
had rolled that out and it just didn't take off. Well, then you see the likes of all of the other companies coming around and saying, we'll do buy online, pick up in store because COVID happened, right? So Sears was really a leader in a lot of things that are just now kind of bubbling up for other reasons. I don't think that would have taken off had COVID not happened.
Right. So again, I'm just standing on the outside looking in. A lot of times it's amazement, actually, and saying that Sears and those kind of models, business models, they, at least from the outside, didn't appear to function correctly anymore. And then the acronym you used is buy online, pick up in store. Sounds to me a good model. The only thing is carrying major inventories and then seeing a model like Amazon, actually, I shouldn't say accidentally. I admire people like Jeff Bezos and those guys, starting out with books and all of a sudden, finding that model. And again, timing is everything. And so sometimes what happens, and then at the same time, I look at Walmart and saying, they're doing well, thank you very much. And the key, again, from my perspective, is the key to Walmart is logistics.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think it is too. And you even look at like an Amazon and at Sears, for example, there are many reasons why an organization does not survive, right? One of the interesting things about Sears is it had, similar to what I would say Amazon's Prime Group is, where you have all of those subscribers, right? And you have all that data.
Yeah.
Sears Holdings had Shop Your Way. It had like some 90 million loyalty members. And that was a huge, robust amount of data. So we could do highly personalized targeting.
Right.
To your point, it was hard to get the stores to keep up with what we could do digitally.
Right.
Whereas Amazon was really a remote first organization, right? It was always intended to never have a store.
Exactly. Was not part of the model.
That's right. The inventory, the operations, the big footprints in the malls, they didn't have to deal with any of that. And then you add in, other factors, including legacy systems, and it's just difficult.
And then adding another one against as a guy standing on the outside looking in with interest, or more than just interest. I'm very interested in models and how they work, and I see the models of a Costco, and the parking lots are just overwhelmed with cars.
Yeah.
And every time I go in there and I want to pick up a dozen eggs, it costs me $365.46.
So it's very interesting. I'm a big Costco fan, but I think that there's a couple of things. One, it works well in America in particular because Americans like big things, right? Like you come here, you go to a chain restaurant, an Applebee's and Olive Garden, and the servings are huge, right? Like Americans like everything big. So the bigger,
Canadians do
you
too.
want, like you want this much, like 3 gallons of olive oil, perfect. I don't know what you're going to do with it, but great. And so I think that's one of the reasons it works so well. The
So actually
second
what they
is,
did here, sorry about interrupting you,
no,
I
go
get all
ahead.
excited about that because I'm kind of watching this. And so Costco just recently, and our Costco's are the same as yours. Everybody goes in there, wants nothing, can't find it because they keep moving it around. So you have to pass all that other stuff that you don't need. And by the time you get out of there, your cart is full. Now they
Yes,
get all new carts. The carts that they're bringing in now are about 50% bigger than the ones they had before. So my
that's very
bill now
smart.
will be the next time I go there is probably $446.27.
It's funny because I said to my mom recently, she said, well, what could you have bought at Costco? I said, Mom, I probably spend $400 a week at Costco. On what? I don't know. I go in for strawberries and blackberries and like a bottle of wine, and I don't know. I come out with like a flower pot, candles, But then
Exactly.
I justify it. I'm going, well, if I only spent 400 here, I probably would have spent this someplace else. And so I feel like I'm getting a deal on stuff I probably don't need, but that's okay.
And the whole parking lot is full. Can't find a place to
Oh, yeah.
park. It is so that model works, right? So
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to podcast one of their senior VPs that worked with them from 2002 to 2006, just when they were in the process of changing the model. And
Hmm.
and again, what people tell me, and that Costa's biggest success is memberships. The amount of money they take in membership is astronomical.
Well, and I think that they have a really good model because if you look at the executive membership where you get 2% back, so sure you spend 100 and something dollars, but we do that. And then of course I'm like, well, we should buy this at Costco. We need a new TV. My daughter needs a new Blu-ray player. We need to buy it at Costco because we get 2% back. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You spend more thinking, oh, I'm getting money back, but you're
Yeah, it's a
paying
good
them to
deal.
get that money back. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's happy leaving and saying, "Well, yeah, okay, it's a good deal."
Yeah.
So I find that interesting dialogue because the whole thing is changing, and especially when you said you were early getting involved in digital phenomena, and including what you and me doing right now. I don't know. You said you were in Indianapolis now,
Yes.
because the last time that we tried to podcast, you were was in January, I think, and you were caught in major storms, and you couldn't make it then because of
I
weather.
was in North
And
Carolina.
was it North Carolina? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in any event, so what I'm saying, there we are sitting here. I'm sitting in central British Columbia. You sitting in Indianapolis, and so we having a discussion, very interesting discussion. Now at the same time that we are doing this, I already know, and you know, that tens of thousands of people around the world are watching us.
Right.
It's amazing. When I first
It is.
started, this, and same as you. Well, you were ahead of me but in any event, I was doing some blogging in the region here around Prince George, and very interesting, and all of that kind of stuff. Then we went one step forward. This is all just before COVID, and said, well, maybe what we should do is, do it with the local television station. So we did that, and that again was regional, and we have lots of interesting people. Then I thought, well, what we should do is maybe, although we have very, very many people here that we can interview, maybe I have to set up another studio in Vancouver to draw on more people. And then COVID came, and we had to leave the television station, and then I had this apartment in downtown Prince George, and we said, well, let's make a studio out of it. So that's what we did. And then we had lots of interviews again. And then the more we watch TV, as we see it today, CNN and all those ones, and seeing them do virtual TV, and all of a sudden we see 3 people talking together, and the one is on this side of the world and the other, and on and on and on. And we say, well, maybe we should do that. And then we want to virtual, and there we are sitting here, you in the one part, we have done with 3, we have done from China, Australia, Europe, all over the world. And in a very short period of time. And now what I see, podcasting is really moving forward, and still only at the very beginning. It's exploding around the world, and now it's more popular than newspapers, and it's starting to become more popular than newscasts, because so much of the conversations are current and interesting topics that people like to listen to.
Well, there's whatever cable or YouTube TV or whatever streaming service you use, there's still going to be infinitely more options on podcasts. And you can find not just the topic you want, but a presenter and a guest that you connect with differently. Whereas you don't get to pick your newscaster, the anchor on the news channel, right? That CNN or Fox or WGN, whoever it is picking that person. So
exactly.
You get to go, hey, I really like John and the way he interviews, and I love this topic, and so this is where I'm going to go, right? And there's so many different topics, from business to true. I love true crime, so true crime, and passions for fitness and health and gardening. I mean, there's a million of them.
And the other thing with current television is so full of commercials. Sometimes 6 or 8, and one after the other, all about stuff that I don't want to have. I know we're going to talk about health and medicine. My wife is a vegetarian. I'm a health proponent and a vegan, and I am. And what I see is all kinds of products that are chemicals that I probably don't want. And probably if you use it, then you solve one problem, you create 10 other ones, something along those lines. But anyway, that's the stuff that I'm not interested. I don't want to have to look at 6 or 8 different commercials all in a row.
Yeah. And I've noticed even on the streaming services, that's happening. Amazon Prime has Amazon Video or Prime Video, whatever it's called. And, they've now added in ads to that service unless you upgrade to the premium. And I was just reading this morning, I think they made like $25 million on those streaming ads. And again, you have a captive audience. I think the challenge will become people moved away from cable, not just because of the cost, but because of the ads. And so to me, the question becomes, in my marketer mind, where is the next place to go, right? Where am I going to capture my audience? Because they're going to get fatigued in streaming, right? There's only so many Super Bowl ads. The streaming is going to fatigue them. Where am I going to get them next? And interestingly enough, when I was at Sears leading it, I leaned heavily into advertising and gaming. Candy Crush was like huge back then. Well, a lot of moms played Candy Crush, and that was our demographic. So we did a collaboration with them, and that's kind of where you have to have someone in your marketing organization in particular that thinks ahead of the game, is more thinking like innovative. How do I get to that next step?
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you see the Amazons really taking the talent that thinks like that, and building and nurturing that talent. And I think Costco's too.
Yeah. And so from a podcasting perspective, North America, and particularly the United States, very, very active. Canada as well, but Europe not as effective or aggressive yet. It's just a matter of time. It will be, and then
Yes.
be becoming increasingly more international, because a lot of people in Europe, especially Western Europe, most of them speak English, no problem, and the same as other people in other areas. But so there is lots of growth potential, and again, from a marketing perspective, like that's how your mind works, I believe, and especially with your background, also your digital background, is saying, for questions for me is, where do we go from here? What will it look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and where should we position ourselves?
Yeah, and what's interesting I find is one of the things I did back at Sears was we invested heavily in Facebook advertising, which back then was like unheard of. People would say, you don't want to put an ad in their feed. It's all about family and friends. And now all you see is ads. But we invested in that. But what I did was partner with a company, a technology that wanted to learn more about how to build their algorithm better to invest in that. So we let them build a case study. Therefore, we got their technology and we're able to do it more efficiently, more effectively, and with a really great ROI. And in allowing them to do a case study, we leveraged what is now some of the best technology out there for social and search ads. Exactly. But again, you have to have someone that's like, okay, where am I going next? And how am I going to be different and break through the chatter right now?
Exactly. So now the other part that, in particular with the executive coaching, I find interesting, and I believe you made a remark that in particular to female executives, or is it male and female, or is there a focus somewhere there, and what is it?
Yeah, it's male and female. I would say the focus is more on, yes, it's executive, so VP and above, but it's more on the type of person. So I am direct and I'm very goal and action oriented. So I like to work with clients that want to make meaningful change, that are also goal and action oriented and want results. There are so many different types of executive coaches, but just my personality is very forward and direct and kind of more the tough love, let's get it done. And so clients that are kind of slowly coming along the way, that's fine. It's just not the client that I work with.
Right. So what do you see there then for aspiring executives that we have, especially in a changing environment? So for me, I'm an entrepreneur, have 10 different companies. I'm an author, done about 4 books and working on 2 other ones. And then I'm very proactive, obviously podcasting. I love it, because the dialogue around the world and the potential of it. And, so where the biggest challenge that I have in the companies that I have, I'm a guy, even at nearly 84, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and I'm an optimist. I avoid negative. Don't give me negative. I don't want to listen to it. And then if I have my passion, and I give it 150%, and I work in work ethic. So I say attitude, passion, work ethic, what follows is success. Work ethic, I work harder than anybody, and I love it still, even at my age. And so I write the books, I'm podcasting. I started from nothing, actually, here. I was born in Holland during the war years, and so was not as successful in school. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then I became a laborer. Everybody kind of looked down on that at that point. But looking back, I was proud of not then, I was kind of looked down at, but I'm proud of it today. And then it took me quite a number of years, and I was already here in Canada, and came to Canada with nothing. I wanted
I was wondering if that was it.
$25.47.
I love that flag. That is amazing.
and came off the bus here, and with my suitcase, couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job, but I had a dream. I was going to build a lumber mill. Now, I always kind of felt I had failed in a way academically, but it didn't stop me from being an optimist and a nice guy. But inside of me, I never quite knew why. That how come the other guys wanted college and universities and on and on and on, I just couldn't. And it took me 32 years. After I was here already for 32, came in 1965, 1997. I walked into a store. Picked up a book, still don't know why, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. And so I'm ADHD, so the more I found out about it, the more I understood it, but initially it was there. I'm building all these companies, and everybody said you're so successful, and I'm expanding and going to the bankers and making proposal for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and laying it in front of them and say a very good plan, and then I say, oh, by the way, I have a mental illness called ADHD, and they say have a nice day. So so. Obviously, then, the more I found out about it, the more I found that it was a superpower. And even now, with all the things that I do, 10 companies, writing books, podcasting, being a speaker, in-demand keynote speaker, and having all that energy and all the things that I have that are part of it, and they say, how do you do it? I say ADHD. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book about that. I wrote a book about Against All Odds.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's not about how successful John is, but all the challenges along the way. Then I wrote another book, ADHD Unlocked. Very successful. Because the more I started speaking about it, and the more I started understanding it, it troubled me. If you look at it, I saw the book from Dr. Halliwell in 1997, picked it up. And now the interesting part is that Dr. Halliwell, he wrote about 18 books, 5 on distractions, has a doctorate, ADHD. And I had him, you were podcast number 246, I had him on my podcast 203. And
wow.
Yeah, and so we had a discussion, obviously, and so I said to him that in my time that I've got to know it, initially when I went to Google's and figuring out what is the frequency of occurrence of this, it showed 8%. The more I found out about it myself, then Googling and from experience, I believe that the frequency of occurrence is probably 20% or more. And I mentioned that to Dr. Halliwell. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. Now, the interesting part that you may find interesting is that I say, and to Dr. Halliwell, is that I believe among successful, and the operative is successful, CEOs and entrepreneurs, the frequency of occurrence of ADHD is 50%. He said, no, John, it's more than 75%. And I agree with him.
I do too. I have it reminds me, I have a cousin who could not go the college route. It just was not working for him. And so he went and took a job at a car dealership. Billy is now, let's see, I'm almost 50, so he's got to be just past his 60s, just into his 60s.
Yeah.
He ended up learning how to sell cars. Then he led the sales team. Then he managed the dealership. Then he ran the finance. Then he bought into the dealership. Now he owns a bunch of car dealerships, is, very, very, very successful.
Yeah.
But one of the things, I had a conversation with him, less cousin to cousin, a more, kind of business person to business person.
Yeah.
And I said to him, where do you get your energy? Because people used to say that to me all the time, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm high on life." It's like before it's like, where does all? I don't know. I'm an Energizer Bunny. And he said that at one point he was told to go on to like anxiety medication, and he said, "So I did, and I figured out I'm not as successful on this." He said, "I'm probably a lot more calm. I might be more fun to be around, but I'm not as successful when I'm on this stuff, so I just don't take it anymore."
Exactly.
And I'm not a proponent for or against it, but it is interesting to see how many people I even know personally in the C-suite or entrepreneurs in particular that really thrive with their ADHD. I don't say suffer because I don't think it's something to you. As you said, I think it's a superpower.
Yeah. Now, the other part, Adriana, is that, and I have nothing against education, universities, and all the other things. And I have a lot of people in industry that I know and interact with, sit on boards and do all that kind of stuff, and involved in leadership. But the difference between me and them is not, I obviously did grade 7 3 times, and just a little bit tongue in cheek. Some people say to me, "Do you feel bad about it that you didn't go any further?" I said, "Yeah, I feel terrible about it. I should have left earlier." So but the point that I'm making is that I always had an interest in business. And so even when I was still in Holland and I was young, I went out of my way to find people that spoke about those kind of topics, and I just listening to them, what made them click. And then the other part, I had the learning school was the one that I lived and all the things that I did. And so what I find with my friends that were overeducated a lot of times is that they think in the box. And I don't do that. I always want to know what is outside that box. Why are we not doing this, that, or the other things? And it makes them feel uncomfortable, so to say the least.
Yeah. They get really uncomfortable. People kind of just don't know how to handle it because they're very accustomed to dealing with people in that box.
Exactly.
And then comes someone that says, "Hey, I'm just as or more successful than you. What about this or that?" And they're like, "Wait, what? What?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a little bit of background on me. And so I believe I've been very active in, thinking back that it took me 50 years from the time I was 13 till the time I was diagnosed when I was 62, officially, to find out and saying, okay, now I know who I am as one of the main elements that changed my life. And but then I felt that it is so unfortunate in a way, it didn't slow me down, but I know there are so many not only young people, but also older people that are being affected by it and don't recognize it. And I believe that is very unfortunate. Now, the other part that I should mention to you, very interesting, is last night I, went to a restaurant, and I'm into healthy things, and we'll talk about that more too. I had a Caesar salad. And I was sitting there in the restaurant, and one fella come up to me and he said, "Sorry I disturb your dinner, but I know you wrote books, and I know I've seen you on podcasting and in this community, and you've done so much for the community and all the other things." He said, "I have a daughter that is 9, and she is struggling with ADHD, and can you help me with that somehow and tell me a little bit about it?" So I said to him, well, step 1 is to, obviously I'm not a doc. I'm not qualified to give you that. I can just do it from my experience. But I'll give you a copy of my book. And so I said, and so we did that this morning. Actually, I got him copies of all my books, signed them for him. But I said to him, is the biggest area there, in my opinion, is do not believe it is a disorder. It isn't. I believe the schooling system is still in the process of dealing with that. To how do we recognize it? What can we do to help the slow learners that it doesn't become an obstacle? And I then reflect back to my 50 years of not knowing, and then although I did fine in the process, more than fine actually, but at the same time I had questions in my mind that troubled me, and I feel I have an obligation to speak about it from time to time when the topic comes up, write about it, so I still do that now. And but how frequently it happens that people approach me about it, and so it is less of a stigma now, but I believe it will still go further than that.
Yeah, I mean, even when I was a kid in school, the kids that either had autism or ADHD, they were kind of the obnoxious, hyper, they're these diagnoses, I don't know if they existed or not, but they certainly weren't used. They weren't treated properly, they weren't addressed, they definitely weren't talked about if they were even diagnosed.
Right.
The flip side is kids now, there's so many more capabilities and skills and tools for their toolbox. I agree with you. I have a 21-year-old stepdaughter who is high functioning autistic and has ADHD. And very happy to say she's almost a senior in college. And she said, I think I want to go to law school. And I had a friend say to me, how is she going to do that? I said, you think about this. Her autism is very social kind of focused.
Right.
And I said, imagine being in a courtroom and having the attorney not even respond to any of the antics going on. I said, exactly. they don't come to her, right? She is extremely talented in writing. She's getting her degree in creative writing. So briefs and things like that, motions, great. And then my joke is she honed those argumentative skills in her teenage years. So she will be very good in that area also. But, her dad and I really look at it as you can do whatever you want to do. And exactly. There are tons of opportunities. It's really up to you to do it. And we'll champion you.
But it has been slow in being recognized, and it's still a process going on here. And I'm sure it does in the United States and in Europe as well. And, and saying that, like for myself, I've always been a good writer. And I was good with numbers. I was not very good sitting in school and listening to things because I was in a different world. I didn't live there. Mm-hmm. If they asked me, what did he talk about the last hour? I say, I haven't got a clue. But once you know how to use it, it is an amazing, and I believe that, at least from my perspective, I have an obligation to share it. I did, actually, we hired a person for a senior management role in our company and advertised it around Canada. And so we laid out the credentials that we required for the particular job, and I put also on that particular thing is that ADHD considered to be an asset.
I love that. Mary started interviewing for internships this summer, and she didn't get the two she wanted. And I said to her, Dad, did she tell them, that she's high functioning autistic and ADHD? And he said, no, she is still, unfortunately, feels very self-conscious of, labeled by that. She's not neurotypical. And so she feels labeled. And it breaks my heart that is still the case now, because she's had it since she was 2, so 19 years. And to still feel like that, right? My goal, what I would love is people to really learn from what you have done and say, okay, well, your progress in elementary school does not determine your progress or success in life. No. And it's up to you to take your personal skills and talents and turn them into your superpowers.
So what I did, I grew up in northeastern Holland during the war years, and it was tough, soft much we shouldn't have seen. Ended up as PTSD, still can feel it today. It was during the hunger winter, there was no food because they had cut off all the food, the coldest winter on record. And then we would, as kids, the three kids, my sister 1 year old, my brother 2 years older than me, every morning we would go out with gunny bags to the railroad yards, pick up anything edible or burnable, and that's what. And then the fear. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last they heard from him when they bombed Rotterdam, and for 5 years they wouldn't know if he was dead or alive. So I had the PTSD, and then also saw far too much I shouldn't have seen, and then also the fear of losing the one parent, because everybody had the same issues and we're all fighting to survive. And so was ended up as the inner child and got counseling for that in my 50s. Very emotional. And so that in combination with the my academic thing, and then I'm sure you're familiar with Holland, beautiful countries, relatively small, 11 provinces, northeastern part, they speak a dialect. And so I grew up speaking dialect. If I speak dialect, the High Dutch doesn't understand. So I grew up speaking dialect, then acquired latter part of my teens to speak High Dutch, and then I barely got that under control. And then I went to Canada and had to learn to speak English, and then I ended up writing 5 books. And have 10 companies. And so the point is simply that it is, I say, I'm a good example. It's not a liability. And say, once you become at peace with who you are, and ADHD and autism combination is not uncommon, very frequent, or it's not a disorder. And look at and saying, how can I make this work for me? And I usually like the idea of being the example. Is say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Not quite like that, but so that sort of thing. But I feel I have an obligation to speak about it.
I do find another interesting thread through particularly entrepreneurs, but kind of the stronger leaders, is they didn't have an easy upbringing. So whether it was something as difficult as what you went through, or they kind of went through the school of hard knocks, or like I was kicked out at 17. I've been on my own since 17. I remember 6 months after I was kicked out, I asked my mom to bring me a gallon of milk at the apartment I had found. And she brought me the gallon of milk and a receipt for $3.49. So I was like, got it. Okay, I see how this is going to be. But to me, not that that was the right decision for her, but it shaped who I became as a person, right? It made me pull myself up by the bootstraps. So, when I decided in the late 90s, I'm going to start a company, I wasn't worried about how am I going to fund it? How am I going to put food on the table? Listen, if I can survive at 17, I can figure this out. I can bootstrap this all the way. If I have the idea, it'll work. So I took a lot of kind of the difficulty I had in my childhood, because I also had some other things. I was a minority, and I was in a German family that I didn't look like. And I took all of that and was like, I just used it to my positive approach if I could.
It became the foundation to what you are today.
Yes,
that's how
absolutely.
I feel it today of me.
Yeah.
That's my foundation. Yeah. And I was fortunate to be there, and I survived it and all the other things, but it has benefited me. So the other thing I quickly was going to, because we're going to have to do this again, because we didn't get all the things that, so I want to show you one more, is that I'm very much into help, and I know you are, and you have been struggling with health issues, and so everybody gets a shock at some point in their life. In 2008, my wife is vegetarian, I'm vegan, I say 80-20, probably approaching more 90-10, I think. So the, in 2008, I got a case of diverticulitis I don't know if you're familiar with that, ruptured. And then you have about 48 hours before it starts attacking the other organs. So I barely made it. They say you came this close. So it sent me a signal. So I have to become serious about health and fitness. And so up to then I had been at year end we do all these things. I'm going to do this, that, and I also going to go to the gym. And then 2 weeks later we find all kinds of reasons that we're far too busy to go, and then we do the same as the following year. So, but I said, no, I'm going to do this in a serious way. I live by appointments, as you do, and so I hire a trainer, and then it becomes an obligation. I always mean my obligations, and so that's what I did. And then after doing that for about 6 years, now by then I already was 58 into my 60s, so I was in my mid 60s when I was training, and so then somebody came up to us and say, "Hey, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me?" I said, "Well, why not?" Right? So I did, and then I competed, and so I was then 68, and I placed for Northern British Columbia bodybuilding, second bodybuilding, third in physique. That qualified me for the provincials, third and second in physique and bodybuilding. That qualified me for the nationals and for the Arnolds. And then COVID came, and so and now I'm training again, and so I will be 84 this November, and I want to compete again at the Arnolds in 25 when I'm 85. So I'm writing a book now. Is living. I'll let you read the title. Living Young,
Yeah,
Dying
living
Old.
young, dying old. That's amazing.
And it's all about the age is just a number. It's the quality of life that counts. And that's a picture of me, actually.
I was going to say that photo is great. I love the photo you picked.
So the other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to send you copies of the 4 books that I will have. I send you the first 3. The other one, Living Young, Dying Old, will have in July. And
I would love that. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to share in particular the ADHD one with my stepdaughter. I think she's an avid reader. I think she will get a lot out of it.
Okay, so we're going to send those out. I'm going to sign them and then send them to you. We'll get them out there either, if not tomorrow, then early next week at the latest. So Scott will get your address as to where to send them.
Okay, great.
So we're going to have to do this again at some point, because we didn't cover it all, So.
We didn't get to all the health stuff, and that's okay. It was a wonderful conversation.
So tell us a little bit before we go about the health issues that you talked about.
Yeah, so kind of like you, I had a wake-up call in 2015. Let me back up. I have been an avid yoga person for a long time. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. and do a 70-minute class every morning, 6 days a week. And so I have always just enjoyed it. As I grew older and worked a lot more and had more companies like you, it's like, well, unless I make an appointment, right? So I started doing that. Well, in 2015, I just kind of doubled over in pain and ended up in the hospital. And the second time that happened, I was diagnosed with acute pancreatitis. And fast forward maybe 6 months to a year, between the end of 2015 and December of 2016, I spent no less than 6 months in and out of, like 6 months of time in the hospital during that time. I would be in for 3 weeks, out for a week. And then in November of 2016, my father-in-law passed away. We were in a very remote town in Nebraska where my husband is from. I had a pancreas attack. We had to rush me to Lincoln, which is 4 hours away, get me on a plane, get me to Chicago, and get me in surgery. And they came in and said to my husband and I, you have to have a surgery called the Whipple or you're going to die. And so I'm headstrong. So I said, I want to research this. And they were very nice. They let me do it. And then they were like, you're going to die. So you just need to have this. I went home for Thanksgiving. I asked to be released for Thanksgiving and went back and had it. They removed half my pancreas, over half my stomach, most of my small intestine, my bile duct, my gallbladder. Took about a year and a half to recover, and I was in a wheelchair for 9 months of that. Ooh. And fast forward to 2019, it didn't really take. So in 2019, I had a surgery called the total pancreatectomy, auto islet transplant. So they removed the rest of my pancreas. So newsflash, you can live without a pancreas. I won't say it's fun, but you can. And they harvest your islet cells, which is what produces insulin in your body. And they transplanted them into my liver. So as soon as you don't have a pancreas, you become a brittle diabetic, insulin dependent. And the goal is over time, your islet cells will wake up and start producing insulin. So I'm very happy I'm off insulin now. But because of this, in the last, about 8 years or so, 9 years, I've had 32 surgeries and procedures. And the interesting thing is you never know what's going to happen. So I say that because people will look at me and be like, I don't even believe it. But in the last 10 days, I've had 2 surgeries, been in the hospital 4 times, 2 in the emergency room, and had 3 doctor's appointments. So what I always say, and in addition to pancreatic disease, I have 9 other diseases. I have liver disease. I have osteoporosis. I have a pituitary gland tumor that's benign. I have Addison's. I have hypothyroid, and of course, diabetes. So I think that everyone in life is given something that is their challenge, right? So for some people, it's finances. For some people, it's relationships or family or career. And I always say, this is what I was given. I was given health as my challenge. I have faced death very clearly 3 times. I can very specifically remember. And so I now take my health very seriously. And I not that I even have a choice whether or not to do. We have a very limited menu of things I can eat and limited amount of energy, but nonetheless, I make my health and my relationships my priority in life, which is different.
Yeah. Well, I must say that you look great, and you do, and like your energy, and it's amazing that with the things in particular, the how do you call it? Living without the
pancreas.
Pancreas. I always thought that pancreas was absolutely critical for somebody, and to have live with it. It was the combination of all of that. Have we advanced substantially in those areas in the last number of years? I sometimes think that the United States is likely the right place to be. They are very proactive in those areas.
We have, in that, like, the islet cell transplant is still new. So they were starting to do more total pancreatectomies, but now we have the addition of the islet cell, so it can balance out your diabetes and get it to be better over time. There is a caveat, which is over time, those islet cells are going to die off and I'll be back on insulin. But, for a time, your body can kind of adjust to that, which I think is amazing. You can take cells from one organ, plant them in another organ, and they can take over that activity. So yes, we've advanced. I sat for a number of years on the National Pancreas Foundation board and have lobbied Congress significantly to improve CDC funding. It is interesting because diseases of the pancreas, there's really only pancreatitis or pancreatic disease and pancreatic cancer, both of which are very deadly and very, very painful, and just impact your whole life. And so, unfortunately, particularly because pancreatic cancer is so deadly, people don't want to fund it because they feel like, well, we're not going to get as much out of it as if we funded breast cancer or prostate cancer, which I was always like, well, if you fund it, we'll find early detection. So that's really what people work on now. Most of the companies are trying to do early detection for pancreatic disease and pancreatic cancer. And there's a foundation in Chicago called the Rolf Foundation I work with now. And the whole goal is to provide not just patient advocacy and support, but to really find that early detection so that people don't have to go through what I've gone through.
See, the layperson like me would understand that pediatric issues are very difficult to detect because they are so hard to access.
Yes. Most of the time they're misdiagnosed as gallbladder. Sometimes they're misdiagnosed as diverticulitis. I mean, it's very interesting. And the other thing, one of the reasons pancreas disease, cancer in particular, is so lately detected so late is because people ignore the signs. They think, oh, I have the flu, because it's really vomiting and intense abdominal pain. And they think, oh, I have gas, I have the flu, I'm vomiting, or something's not sitting with me, I have food poisoning. These are symptoms that people don't necessarily correlate to a serious disease. And quite honestly, I probably wouldn't have either, but I knew something was wrong because I literally took a sip of water and doubled over in pain and fell onto the ground. And I was in the middle of the office. And it was horrible. And again, mine was so advanced that, I've had all these surgeries and all these modifications now to my system, but I hope that people don't end up in that space.
Right. And even now you're so proactive about it, is that, again, for a layperson, I've been lucky, at this age, but I believe it is, I've learned from being close to it, not anything near what you have experienced, obviously, but I believe that the body, when we finally understand it, in my case, that I'm very diet conscious, do mainly plant-based food. I try to, if I go to a store, I stay on the outside of the store because all the processed foods, I don't know what's in it, I don't want it. And then the other part is going to the gym because I'm training to compete against Arnold Schwarzenegger. It gives me a motive to go to the gym, and I go there not because I want to be a bodybuilder, but more for, it motivates me as a fitness. And then the other experience is that I didn't always respect that fully, is that the body is such an amazing organ in combinations and tries to be healthy and allows only so much abuse until people cannot refix it. But in your case, you were affected by so many things that it's amazing that you're still here.
It really is. And in addition to having done yoga 6 days a week, I was a vegetarian for 30 some years. So I read every nutrition label. I ate very healthy. There were no lifestyle. I didn't even drink. There were no lifestyle indications that would have created it, right? There was nothing I did that caused this.
No.
Not that even if there is, no one should go through it. But it is very, I'm very blessed and grateful to still be here today. I credit not just my doctors, but my husband, because he's given me a lot of strength and support. And the one time in particular that I was like, the organs are shutting down, it's time. He was like, no, you fight. Like, you're not leaving me. We're in this together. You fight. And so that means a lot.
So the advice you give people in a general sense about the medical system, sometimes I feel that, and I'm talking Canada now, and maybe to a certain extent the United States, but in Canada, is that we have universal health care that is not always effective in terms of being proactive, but for most people saying that don't abuse your body, and then be proactive if you feel that there is something not right. Be proactive about it to find out, right?
Yes, absolutely. When something's wrong. So a good example of this is I had a surgery to install a port over here a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. And about 3 days after it was installed, I was like, something's wrong. I think I'm getting an infection. And so 2 days later, I went back to the hospital and said, I think it's infected. No, we don't think so. We think it's okay. I said, I would like you to put me on an antibiotic because I have all these other medical conditions.
Yeah.
2 days later, the infection had gone all the way up my neck and into my core artery.
Oof.
And 2 days later than that, I had to have it removed. So
Oof.
the thing about it is, listen to your body. It will tell you.
Exactly.
It will absolutely tell you something is not right with me. And if you know, keep fighting for you. You have to be your own best advocate.
And
no doctor is an advocate for you. Yeah,
and
be informed.
Because Google and all the other, it's all available to us already, right? Not all, but be proactive.
Yeah.
Adriana, this was an amazing podcast. I love the conversation. I want to stay in touch. I'm going to make sure the 3 will go out, and this one I'm going to send also to you.
Oh, great.
And once we got it, and then let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Adriana. Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.